Welcome back, my friends. There is a moment in every entrepreneur's journey where what once felt deeply aligned no longer fits. And I'm not talking about burnout, because it's not burnout, it's not self sabotage, it's something deeper. It's the quiet nudge that what got you here won't get you there. That the business that you originally built still works on paper, but your body is saying, it's time for something else. And for me, that moment really started to come to fruition this year. I think the moment started happening a couple of years ago, but the amount that needed to be shed and refined and the courage that I needed to have to really honor what I was feeling, it took a minute. And it really came through this year, not in a dramatic breakdown, not in some big burning it all down kind of way, but it came gently through discernment, through silence, through listening, through presence, through the sense that I couldn't force one more word of content unless it was fully aligned. And today I want to take you behind the scenes of what that felt like, what I did with it, and how I knew it was time to rebuild again, and how I did just that. So let's get started. So the shift didn't arrive like a storm. It really arrived as these series of whispers over time, these quiet moments of realizing that I didn't feel excited to create in the way that I was creating anymore. And it wasn't because I was confused, but it was because I was bored. I was detached. I was no longer lit up by what I had built. The offers still worked and the sales still came in, but I didn't want to talk about them anymore. And there was a time when I kept saying, like, can I do it bored? Can I do it bored? I just need to do it bored. Because for someone like me whose business is my voice, that was the biggest red flag. And I had spent years building strategies that worked, funnels that converted, messaging that moved, but I had outgrown the identity that they were built around. And that dissonance, once you feel it, you cannot fake your way through it very long. And it would have been easy to maybe call this self-sabotage, to say that I was just scared or stuck or not fully showing up, which there were definitely aspects of that that were true. But I've been doing this long enough, and I've done enough work on myself to know the difference between sabotage and a true soul-aligned shift. From my experience, sabotage feels like hiding, shrinking, the fear of being seen. This was different. This was a gentle, grounded knowing of this isn't it anymore. There wasn't urgency. There was spaciousness. Like something new was trying to make its way in, and I needed to get quiet enough to let it. And that silence and that pause, it became sacred. And I just gave myself permission to not fill it with noise or productivity or distraction. I let myself feel it fully. Because when you're a leader, and especially when you've built a brand that is so deeply tied to your personal evolution, you must honor that. Otherwise, you will find yourself performing that clarity that, let's just be honest, you no longer feel. And so for me, I had to start clearing space. I paused launches. I pulled back on content. I quietly retired a few offers. I publicly retired an offer. I said no to things that looked really good on paper, but just felt off in my body. I started saying no to people and relationships and partnerships and dynamics that were no longer aligned. I did an entire episode on that. And I just waited, because the clarity doesn't come all at once. It comes in waves. And one of those waves became the revenue accelerator and the evolution of that. One of those waves became some changes that I'm doing to the brand accelerator and what's to come with that. One of the waves became the upcoming podcast rename and rebrand that's coming later this fall. One became this deeper, quieter confidence in my voice, not just what I say, but what I stand for. One of those waves was the knowing that I could let the pomp and circumstance go, let that need to feel and look like the shiniest one or the sparkliest one when behind the scenes it wasn't integrating through. And I just allowed that to be enough. And I let myself evolve without having to broadcast every single moment of the process. I let my offer shift without needing to justify the change. I let my podcast shift and the name shift, which I can't wait to share more of that with you all. And I just let go and let God and my highest self lead. And I've got so much to show you from this that is coming later this year and on into 2026. Because when the clarity did land, it landed fast. And now everything in my business, or everything that I'm working on in my business right now, because again, this comes in waves, and then I have to take time to process, and then I have to take time to actually take action on it. But everything that is starting to unfold, it finally matches my energy again, the energy of who I really am today. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel scripted. It doesn't feel like I'm pretending to be someone or love something just because it works. It doesn't feel like I am forcing myself to do some kind of, business in a certain way, or I've got to do a launch this way, or I've got to do this branded photo shoot this way because that's what other people do. It's the kind of alignment that you just can't manufacture. And in order to get there, you have to make space for it, that big, scary, quiet space for it. And with that to say, there is so much coming through the pipeline. I cannot wait for you to see what is to come. We have got a beautiful evolution of my coaching container, the Revenue Accelerator. And, by the time this podcast comes out, I don't even know if that's going to be the name. I'm still sitting with that clarity. But we've got so much of an evolution that's coming for my high ticket coaching experience. We've got so much of an evolution that's coming for my low ticket membership. We've got so much of an evolution that is coming for this podcast. It is such a long time coming. And I am just proud of myself that I finally had the courage to listen to that small voice that had been there for years, that had been saying what it was saying, that I knew what was to be true. And I'm just so grateful and honored that you have stuck around. I know a lot of you have been with me since the beginning. This podcast first launched in 2017. I have aired an episode every Wednesday since then. That's a lot of episodes. That's a lot of different evolutions of me. That's a lot of offers. That's a lot of business. That's a lot of struggle. That's a lot of life. And for those of you who have been there since the beginning, or maybe you've been here for a little while, maybe you just started listening to me, I'm just honored and I'm grateful that you have given me the space, whether you realize it or not, to evolve in this way. And if I'm still for you, that's amazing. If I'm not anymore, that's also amazing. Because the most important piece to this is that if you're in the space between, if you're doing the work, serving the clients, hitting the numbers, working on relationships outside of business, but it still doesn't feel like you anymore, you are not broken, and you are not failing, and you are not sabotaging. You are evolving. And here's what else I'll say. You don't have to burn it all down, but you do have to be honest about what no longer fits. You can pivot with precision, and you can build with reverence, and you can recalibrate without losing the foundation that you worked so dang hard to build. But it must start with telling the truth. So if this is helpful, this is what I did. You could ask yourself, what no longer feels true? What conversations am I tired of having? And I don't just mean in business. I mean outside of business, in relationships, in friendships. I did a whole episode about this. What conversations do I want to have? What kind of people do I want to be around? I mean, truly, you are the sum of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. Are they really matching and meeting you at your level of frequency of where you're going? Ask yourself that. Ask yourself, what energy do I want to bring into every room that I enter? And does my current business and life and relationships reflect that? So if you're ready to work on identity recalibration of your business, of your life, not just your content, not just your offers, but the very frequency that your life and your work operates from, this is where my work is going. This is where we do this work in my high level coaching containers. You will walk out with a completely new identity and recalibration of who the F you are. Messaging, aligned offers, yes, but also in your life, how you show up in your marriage, how you parent, your friendships, your relationships, and the clarity that you can feel in your body, not just words on a page. That's the work that we are doing for the rest of this year and on into 2026. Well, really, I have been doing this year behind the scenes, but I'm finally to the place where the waves are starting to set a little bit and I can start to rework the stuff that I need to do front of house to call you in. So with that, just trust your knowing. If you're interested, you know where to find me. If you want to talk more about it, there will be more information as we continue to roll out this year. But until next time, trust your knowing, because clarity always comes if you are brave enough to make space for it.